Good morning. Good morning, thank you. 1 point to the person who shouted good morning back. And actually, it's lovely to hear just the amount of conversation we're having. I was out there, and it is absolutely brilliant to be back doing face-to-face events. It's also lovely to be here in Brighton. This is actually our first SRA Innovate event since we did our last one in Cardiff at the end of last year. And actually, I have to admit that I immediately prefer Brighton to Cardiff. Actually, I'll just finish there. That's gone down well. And that is no slight upon Cardiff. I also want to say hello, actually. This will be going out on catch-up on YouTube, so welcome to anyone who's watching there. But yes, I prefer Brighton to Cardiff because when I was in Cardiff, the event went great, but the evening before didn't. Let's just say I had an incident in my hotel involving a child lock and a balcony, and I ended up on the early hours, semi-dressed, stuck on a balcony in my hotel. So I was delighted to be staying at the Ibis last night up the hill and have an entirely uneventful evening, which was a real pleasure. But if you take nothing else from this event, I will give you this practical advice. If ever you go on a balcony, take a doorstop, take a mobile phone, and be fully dressed. Now, I'm not really showing off my sort of life skills there as a sort of credible chair, but hopefully as a representative from the SRA, I am someone who's sort of even-handed and fair, or at least I thought I was, until I saw the panel members we had chosen for the event today. Now, they're all excellent, but it would appear that a third of the people who are on the stage today are called Ben. So I have revealed my Ben bias, but perhaps we have two excellent Bens, and I'm a Ben who's chairing, but I think you'll see on the programme I'm listed as Benedict. That's probably to avoid confusion, although I generally only call myself Benedict if I'm trying to be posh or Catholic, or if I'm in trouble with my mum. But I'm none of those today. But yes, so I'm Benedict, I'm from the SRA, and as I say, it's an absolute pleasure to be in Brighton, and Brighton's a really sort of appropriate place for us to be doing an event around innovation and innovation in legal services. Lots of people know there's lots of creative industries here in Brighton, but also Brighton has a proud history of innovation. You've got down on the beach there, you've got the Volks Railway, the first railway, I think electric railway that was publicly operated. You've got the oldest aquarium. You've got a great history here of pioneers in cinematography and silent movies. And then just round the corner in Kensington Gardens, you had the first ever body shop before it grew to be an international brand. So Brighton has a proud history of sort of innovation and invention. Would it be a bit of a stretch to say that Brighton invented ABBA? Maybe, but actually this building here that we're in has, I suppose, shows the importance both of innovation and originality. It's obviously a beautiful building, but it also shows the importance of, whether it's people or buildings, the need to adapt and change over time. So actually this building was originally built as horse stables by George IV. It's then been used as an ice skating rink. It's been used as a hospital. It's now an arts and culture centre, and that leads me on to it's also the place that gave birth to ABBA, because it hosted the Eurovision Song Contest in 1974, and that's where ABBA won with Waterloo and sort of got propelled onto the world stage. And I suppose talking of Waterloo, it might be an appropriate moment to talk about some sort of more boring matters. If you need water or the loo, that is just outside there. Feel free to go. And we are not expecting an SOS today. So if there is a fire alarm, treat it as genuine because it will be genuine. And so you'll head out here and round the exit, but you'll have staff to guide you to the evacuation point. So I promise I'm going to limit my ABBA song puns for this session. This is a serious business, of course, and we're here to talk about innovation and the future. And I suppose one question you might have is, why is the SRA interested in that? Most of you hopefully know who the SRA is, and hopefully you know that sort of our bread and butter is around sort of standards, high professional standards, making sure those that enter the profession are good enough to enter the profession, making sure those that are in the profession are meeting the standards the public and the profession expects. However, we're also interested in innovation because we also have a duty around access to justice. And we all know there's a big problem with access to justice in this country, and that has been for us as long as I've known. And there's no simple solutions to that. It's a complex problem. It's a really important problem, though, as well. We need to see what we can do about that. And one area we think as a regulator within sort of our powers that we think we can look to do more is how do we encourage and support innovation? How do we encourage and support perhaps technology that might help more people access legal services more easily? And so that's why we're interested in it. And actually, it is really important to us. We have a strategy at the moment, and there's 3 core priorities on there. And one of those actually is around innovation, technology to improve access to justice. So that's why we're here. I suppose you may then ask, well, what are we doing in practice? What does that actually mean? So I wanted to pick out 3 examples of how we're trying to encourage innovation at the SRA. Firstly, hopefully most of you know that we did a whole reform programme of our rule book, what's now the standards and regulations, a couple of years ago. And the whole idea of that was you had this very long 600 plus pages of rules, some of them quite pernickety, quite a lot of them very prescriptive. And we wanted to strip that back, get rid of the unnecessary bureaucracy, get rid of the pernickety rules that is telling you how to run your business, because actually we think you're professionals, we can trust in your judgment to make the right decision in those cases based around some board principles as to what ethical behaviour is. So that was the whole change of our rule book. We have started an evaluation process of that. We've done the first year's evaluation. There'll be a 3- and 5-year evaluation of it as well. It's definitely too early to declare any victory on whether that's been successful or not. But I do think we are hearing some good stuff around the flexibility it's given people. And actually, I do think it stood up very well to what happened in March 2020 when we were thrown into a pandemic. Because actually, the flexibility was in there meant that in the old world, we might have had hundreds of solicitors or thousands coming to us going, can I not follow this rule? Can I get a waiver on that rule? I can't physically go and see somebody, so what do I do? But actually, we got very little of that. We did get it in some spaces, but we had to put out fairly limited guidance. We didn't have to issue waivers, and people adapted extremely quickly and extremely impressively to working in the new world. The second thing we do to support innovation is we have our SRA Innovate programme. We've got Ben and Warren here, if you want to raise your hand. Warren at the back and Ben, who both work on that programme. And we've also got Darmistra as well, also at the back. And that programme's all about, effectively, you've got an idea that is about innovation in legal services that might increase access to justice, but you don't quite know what to do about it, or you don't quite know how the regulation works, come to us and we'll see what we can do to help. And we can do that through, we can test ideas, we can trial ideas, we can give advice. It may actually be perfectly fine within the regulations, but it's there to have, I suppose, we don't want us as a regulator just to be the regulator that says no. We want to try and make innovative ideas work if we can. And then finally, we do a lot of work, and we have a number of projects to encourage innovation. One of the biggest ones we had was the Legal Access Challenge, which was a competition to get around, to get ideas for increasing tech ideas that might help people, members of the public or businesses, small businesses, access legal help. We had 300 people involved in that. We had 100 entries, had some really interesting entries. One of the winners, for instance, was a chatbot for those with learning disabilities to help them navigate the benefits system. But it wasn't about the winner takes it all. It was also about the insights that we could gain from that. And actually, that is a lot of what our work as a regulator doing is, what are the blockers to innovation? Where are the opportunities? And one thing we found out through doing that was one blocker is, it's not necessarily just legal services regulation, or sometimes people think it isn't that at all, but it's the interplay of how do I navigate financial services regulation, legal regulation, and then GDPR and information governance stuff, and how that all interconnects, and blooming heck, it's just so complex, and I can't go one place to get an answer. And so one thing we're trying to do out of the back of the insight we've got there is work with other regulators like the ICO, the FCA, to try and work out how we can join up better and make that journey easier for people. Obviously, I've mentioned the pandemic. We're not fully, hopefully we're past the peak, but we're not fully out of it. Actually, one of our we're one speaker down today because they've had to isolate due to COVID. COVID's still with us. But I did want to, it obviously has changed the way lots of us have worked, and I wanted to ask you a question, and perhaps if you could put up your hands. Put up your hands if you've made a change to your business on the back of the pandemic that you think is here to stay. Yeah, pretty much the whole room for the benefit of the camera. And a second question, who uses video conferencing for clients? Again, pretty much everyone. Now, that doesn't surprise me because we did some research with Oxford University last year, and actually what it showed was the pandemic had changed behaviour pretty significantly amongst law firms. You can find, there's webinars out there on that and what the conclusions are. But those two questions there, it was sort of 80-90% of firms were giving similar answers to that. So that research did show there were sort of opportunities and people were changing, but it also showed there are still barriers out there. Two of the biggest barriers to innovation are one, money. I won't say money, just money. And people cannot, it's getting the investment to invest in tech and innovation is a challenge, and it may be even more challenging in the current climate. And then secondly, there is a challenge around in-house tech knowledge within firms, particularly smaller and medium-sized firms, to be able to sort of make informed decisions or confident decisions around that. So we might explore some of those issues today. So just to finish off, just a couple of things that are coming up from our side. We'll be carrying on our SRA Innovate programme. We've also just completed a project in the South West and South Wales, working with other regulators, Swansea University, some charities and councils down there. Again, looking at how legal tech can help people access legal help, particularly those who are in positions of vulnerability. We'll be publishing the results of that this summer, so look out for that. And we're also currently running a pilot on unbundling. And that is, for anyone, just if you don't know what unbundling is, that's where you sort of split up the legal service. So the solicitor or firm does all the sort of expert complex stuff, and then you try and let the client do some of the more simple stuff or stuff they can self-serve. Obviously, there's potential around that you can reduce costs and make legal services more affordable. However, there are potential risks. You know, what happens if something goes wrong? What will your insurer think about that? How can you reassure yourself you're working in your client's best interest? So that's why we're doing that project, partly to explore those questions and see how we regulate that area and whether there's scope to do more. So as I say, we've got an excellent lineup of speakers today. We've got 7 speakers. And what I want you to get out of today, so you can challenge us if you don't think you're getting this, is I suppose it's a blend of some of the big picture stuff around how the legal sector's changing, what's happening in terms of innovation and technology. But then I'd also hope you get to leave with some practical tips and advice, perhaps, that you may be able to take back to your business and think about in terms of your day-to-day. So I'd like to invite the speakers now up onto the stage for our first panel session. So if you'd like to join me, thank you. So if you go there, right. Ben, if you go there.
Thank you.
There's a Ben stronghold at this end of the table, so I'll introduce the speakers. So first we've got Ben Darby, who joins us from Derby and Derby Solicitors, which I think is in North Devon, where... South Devon. You never mix those two up, you know, sorry. He's solicitor and managing partner there. So he's got a lot of experience, decades of experience within high street practice, but also he's been involved in a legal tech startup, which is about improving communication with clients, I think working with Exeter University. Yes. So it's going to be quite interesting to get Ben's insights on sort of the high street solicitor perspective, but then also with some of that tech knowledge as well. Next, we've got Bhavisha Patel, and she's head of legal tech solutions at Eversheds, and she's very much there in the business to look at how the firm can use tech more efficiently, but also how they can provide better service for their clients through using tech, as well as looking at some of the big trends in the sector. So it'd be great to get her insights. Then next to her, we've got Guy Stern. Guy's sort of background was as an IT expert, software development, web development. But in 2018, he created a platform that's now called Legal Connection, and that was looking at a sort of tool to help collaboration between legal professionals and their clients. Originally had quite a bit of success in South Africa in terms of the pro bono sector there, and then I think Guy came over here, got some funding, won the competition, has been here ever since. So Thank you for joining us, Guy. And then finally, we've got Joanna Goodman at the end, who's a tech journalist and IT columnist for Law Society Gazette. She wrote, I think, the first ever book on artificial intelligence in the law, Robots in the Law. I should give it a plug, shouldn't I, seeing as you've been gracious enough to speak today. She's worked with a variety of organisations, including Google and Oxford University, in terms of tech and legal tech, and she's also an associate fellow at Westminster Law School. So I wanted to start, the way this panel session is going to work, I've got a few questions I want to ask the panellists. I'm going to do an opening question, but we really want to get questions from you. So I will come to you quite early. So let's try and avoid a tumbleweed moment. Think up your best questions, and it'd be great if we can get some insights and conversation back and forth. But as I say, I've got a few questions first. But the question I wanted to start off with for each panelist to just say a couple of minutes on was, what does innovation in the legal sector mean to you, sir? So we start with you, Ben.
For me, I think it's opportunity. You've already mentioned access to justice. I personally, because I'm on the high street, I actually prefer the phrase access to legal services, because justice is this sort of notion that we all have an idea in our head what justice is, and more importantly, the public have a view of what justice is. But when you look at the high street, so much of what we do, 1.2 million property transactions a year, 250,000 probates go through every year, is access to justice. So from my point of view on the high street, I see innovation as an opportunity to law firms, because the reality is as well, we're pretty much a closed shop. So we've got, whilst there's license conveyancing out there, and whilst there's legal execs and there's other areas you can buy your will pack from W.H. Smith, but ultimately for us, the Solicitors brand is very strong. And I think an innovation for me has to be consumer focused. It has to be the end consumer focus. It has to be what it means to Mr. and Mrs. Miggins in the street, how they're going to access those legal services, and what tech can do with that, as well as the way you work and what we do, the expertise we have, is giving more access to them. So whether that is through platforms, whether that is through platforms that have multiple language functions, whether that is through communication, forms of communication, lines of communication. From my point of view, what I'm looking to build, people trying to manage their own preferences with my law firm. Do they want to be contacted by phone? Do they not want to be contacted by email? Do they rather be contacted at certain times a day? Do they want a repository of their information in one place they can view? It's those sort of aspects I see as innovation that are far more important. I know we'll probably cover AI and blockchain later, which do have relevance on the high street, but I do think personally innovation has got to be, at this stage for firms like mine in South Devon, it has to be about how clients and future clients interact. Too many people don't cross that bridge or the threshold into our offices, and that has to be broken down. That may be through vulnerabilities, disabilities, or just fear of cost, fear of expertise, just fear of lawyers.
Thank you, Ben. That was a great start. Vivisha, what's your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, so for me, I think innovation is a term that gets knocked around a lot. But when you boil it down, for me, it's transformative change. So it's about doing something differently, which doesn't necessarily need to be technology. It could be a process change to deliver something more efficiently or in a different way to our clients, because ultimately, it's about delivering a better service for them. I actually have a really good example where recently we worked with a client, and yes, we did deliver a tech solution, but from a tech perspective, it was actually a pretty basic solution. It wasn't revolutionary for us, but for the client, it was transformative. And the GC actually turned around and said it's absolutely revolutionary for the way that we work with Eversheds, because it changed everything for them, gave them more visibility, better understanding of the work that they're doing with us, and it just provided them an overall better service. So for me, it's very much that transformative change and doing things in a different way.
Thank you. Guy?
Okay, so I'm a non-lawyer, and so I don't know much about the law. I'm a techie. I build software, and so my first impression of the legal profession when I started to work with them and to chat to them was that there were a lot of things that lawyers do which are different to every other industry. The way they communicate, the way they bill, you name it. The way they pretty much everything. And so, yeah, I was probably a little naive going back to 2018, but I thought, wow, I can fix this. I can build software, and if these lawyers just use the software, then they will be able to do, they'll be able to deliver their services in a way that's more friendly to the client. And that's still my mission. It's, I've realized over the last few years that it's quite a challenge. Law firms, investors often say to me, why did you pick law tech? And I say, because they're in so much need of innovation. It's a great industry to go to because, so that's it. I'm just trying to, I see legal innovation as trying to help lawyers to use tech in the best way possible to increase their service.
Thank you, Guy. And Joanna?
Well, I just thought about this on the way here, and I'm going to take a slightly different angle. So I thought about, well, what actually is innovation? So Silicon Valley startups, they identify a pain point and they find a new way of approaching it. So the idea is to innovate, to do things differently and challenge the status quo. So innovation is focused mostly on change. So in legal, it kind of goes two ways, because it's bringing a traditional profession into the modern world, but you still want to keep some of it. So you still want to keep the trust, you still want to keep the thing that's special, but maybe you want to make it more accessible, maybe you want to make it commercially more amenable. So I guess there's that. On the commercial side, I've seen a lot about contracts, like everything's about contracts. So there's so many solutions that innovation is confusing. And on the consumer side, well, it's about startups. And some of them are pretty cool, and they look at things in a different way. And some of them look at things in a different way where there's actually less need for lawyers. But some of the innovative technology gives you all an opportunity to expand your business in ways that you'd never thought of before.
Thank you, Joanna. So some really interesting insights there. And actually, that sort of confusing point, actually, I wanted to come to you first on that, Ben, is particularly if you're a smaller or medium-sized firm, it can feel pretty confusing and just so much tech out there, so many people selling you things or saying this is going to solve all your business problems. One, I suppose, how do you approach that, and what would your advice be to firms in terms of if they're thinking about tech and tech for their business?
My gosh, I've done it both ways. So the reason I'm probably sat in this chair here is because of the process I went through 3-4 years ago with procuring new software for my existing firm, because we wanted to upgrade. We wanted more flexibility and everything else. And I got utterly frustrated. And I apologize to anyone in the legal IT sector in this room. But
Guy,
I've got one on the panel here. But the reality is it was very sales-driven. It was very heavy on the sales. I was being told by salesmen and women constantly what I needed and what I didn't need, and their competitors didn't do it and they did it, and it got very sales-driven. So what I learned from that process very, very quickly was, looking back now, is if you're looking to embark in bringing legal IT into a smaller firm like mine, with 3 offices, 20 heads, 22 heads, 10 lawyers, I cannot underestimate the need to do a proper specification document, a proper wish list at the beginning, and really do a wish list, really break down what you want to do. But what ended up with me is I got so frustrated with the IT, which I did procure, and it's in place, and it's operating, it does what it says on the tin, and it's fine, is I ended up actually emailing University of Exeter and said, could we build something different, please? And
so your advice is email a university.
Email a university, or threaten your software supplier you're going to email a university. But no, because what frustrates me, you sit there with legal IT firms, and what confirms me at the time, and I'm not here to moan about them particularly, because there's a lot of very strong products out there. But we're still sending pieces of paper to clients to fill out their client detail form. And they send it back, and my secretary punches it into a database. It's mental. It's absolutely mental. So what I'm trying to build with the university is a communications platform. Effectively, we're trying to improve that, how clients interact with us. They can have their preferences, and they can put their name and address, and they can move address, and they can have a repository of their documents, and all that's in one place, and that will expand out. But what I am going to say generally, as you say, email at university, it worked for me, because it actually led to me getting a government grant and helping me fund what I'm building. But actually, what I would say is, before you sprint down the route with a provider, look for collaboration perhaps outside of some of the traditional. Look at I have learned very quickly there's some great development agencies, software development agencies out there in every town and city across this country. See if anyone, because the problem you have, and hear what Joe was saying about, find that pinch point, find that problem you've got, and it might not be you need a total IT solution. You might need somebody locally bespoke who can build that solution for you. It might be an app for your phone, and look around and look for collaboration, and look sometimes outside of the legal sphere. Is my view.
No, thank you. So I think some sort of nodding heads and looks on the panel. So Bhavisha, what about you? You're obviously coming from a larger firm perspective, but are there some principles you think you can take in terms of choosing tech and how you approach things?
Yeah, so just following on from what Ben was saying, the amount of times people come to me and say, I've got this problem, I know what I need, give me this, and it could be a mobile app or some portal, whatever it may be, but actually you've got to take that step back. And we have, within the firm, we look at the people and the process before we look at the tech. So that always comes first. And in doing that, it really helps us to understand the problem that they're trying to fix, but also how that impacts the people that are going to be using the change or impacted by the change. And then that helps to drive the solution. And as I was saying earlier, it doesn't necessarily have to be technology. It could be a simple process change. But without understanding the people and the process, the solution is never going to solve the problem.
And Guy, what's your view sitting on the other side of the fence?
Yeah, it's funny because on the other side of the fence, we're trying to sell products into law firms, and a lot of the times we come up against the same sort of issues. So, the law firm will say, "Well, this isn't exactly how we do things," or they'll look at our product and they'll say, "Our previous system did this, 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 and this. Your system does that, that, that. Can you change your product and rather make it like this so that we can so that it works the same as our old product?" And we sit with the problem. Do we change the product and pour a lot of money into changing that product so that it works for one law firm, or do we say, sorry, this is the way it works and it's always going to work like that? We've got a client now who's we've got every matter has a different color, but there's only so many colors. We've got about 10 colors, and the client says he doesn't like the colors, especially the red. He finds the red quite jarring. So do we now create a new color palette just for this client, or do we build a feature where you can create your own one? So yeah, it's difficult. In a way, I find law firms to be very difficult to sell into because they're quite demanding. They want things to work in a certain way, and they're not. And yes, your advice is go and find a development company that will make it exactly the way you want, which is good. But that leads to fragmentation, which we're seeing in the legal tech world. There's 10,000 different products that all do roughly the same thing in a different way. So yeah, it's something that I'm confused about and challenged about for sure.
It's also very expensive. I'm learning.
Yeah. There's a client of mine who says, I'm going to hire someone for $20,000 to build exactly how I want. And I want to say to this guy, I don't know if that's going to work out for you. They may have quoted you $20,000, but you're going to get to a certain point in the project, and then they're going to say you've run out of your hours, and they're going to want more money. And these things die a terrible death sometimes. And yeah,
And it's the life of the product, isn't it? Because the support, if you have a bespoke product, the support for that product, you then need to factor that in over the time. And so we might come on to whether off the shelf is better than the bespoke. But Joanna, what's your view on what's just been said on that question?
What on buying legal tech or selling legal tech?
Or anything that anyone said. Yeah. Where do you think? How do you think firms should approach it?
What do I see? Well, the thing is, legal procurement is slow, especially in the bigger firms. So that's challenging for vendors. But I think also for the mid-sized firms, there's a confusion of choice. And it's quite hard to pick. And one of the downsides, which is actually, I think, I'm a journalist, so I'm bound to think something controversial, but I think it's because there isn't the right, a lot of the time there isn't the right follow-up from vendors. They so much want to get your signature on the line, and then when you've got it, there isn't always the right sort of support, and there isn't also very much unbiased consultancy. So many of the tech consultants are also vendors, so it's quite difficult because it's very much buyer-seller, and there isn't enough sort of genuine compare the market out there. I think having something built is cool if you know exactly what you want it to do. I mean, if I've interviewed a few firms where they have built something that's self-service, that works really well, that saves a lot of time, that it enables their clients to self-serve. But you've also got to think, and I guess this is my tip, cloud computing opens a lot of doors, because you don't have to invest quite as much and you can switch more easily. So if you do choose something, you're not necessarily committed forever to it. Whereas previously you had to buy a platform and you had to commit to it until it was time to renew your platform and revise your stack. Now you can try things a little bit more. So maybe on the edges of tech, not your practice management, but on the edges of tech, maybe experiment a little and get comfortable with trying things.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to share their experience of either what they've heard? Does anything resonate, or does anything totally jar with anyone in the audience around sort of buying tech? Does the proliferation of people trying to sell you things, is that something? Yes? Do you want to say something? If we get a microphone just down to, and if you could just say your name and where you're from, that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ursula. I'm from Oxford Family First Solicitors. Sort of a question for Guy, I suppose, and you may not want to answer this. It might be top secret squirrel commercial information, but the doors are shut, so it'll be fine. Is there anyone who's already offering a very bespoke or a service that you think does it well? And the reason I'm asking that is what I notice is the stuff that seems to work for lawyers. I'm a family lawyer, but it's built by lawyers who've accidentally fallen into tech, rather than built by techies who've accidentally fallen into law. And I suppose that goes back to what you were saying earlier. So my question is, who is doing it well? Could you give your top 3? Sorry if that's not the sort of question I should have asked, but that's my question.
My top, you want me to tell you my competitors?
Yeah, go for it, because we'd like to know.
Sure. Look, I think that, we are in practice management. We want to be the tool that lawyers, open in the morning and use their whole day. I think our biggest competitors are Leap. Leap do amazing work. I mean, in terms of the way they sell, it's, really impressive. They seem to... I've spoken to a lot of law firms that say they're locked into a 3-year contract, and so Leap are obviously doing a very good job of selling the product.
Well,
and
they also don't give up until you say yes. That's their sales strategy.
Maybe I need to try. Yeah, then there's another one called HiQ that all the big firms use, and there's another one called Clio. They're all, in almost billion-dollar valuations there.
What about some of the smaller, more niche stuff like Quantum, who was built by Mr. Justice Mostyn, who was having a dull day at the High Court, I suspect, and just built everything that all counsel in finance, all counsel and solicitors in finance tend to use to build their schedules of assets. Simple stuff. It's just not as ugly as Excel spreadsheets. Yeah,
that's impressive. And I'll talk in a few minutes about what we do. We've created a platform that looks a little bit like WhatsApp, and lawyers use it to communicate with their clients. It's just been taken up by a few firms, including Eversheds Sutherlands, to be used in their access to justice arm of their, to deliver pro bono to refugees from that are coming in from Ukraine. So I think we do something right as well. Thanks.
Ursula, can I just follow on? Do you mind?
Yeah, you Ben, and then come to Joanna.
Sorry. Just follow up on your point you're saying about so many of these products look like they've been built by perhaps board lawyers and not techies and everything else. What I think I've observed by looking at a lot of everything else, I think the problem we've got is actually it's not the fact it's either been developed by or not developed by lawyers, it's lawyers that buy it. what you have in every law firm who's making these buying decisions are lawyers. And when I say lawyers, I'm not talking cashiers, secretaries, receptionists, clients. It's lawyers, which means the sales drive is really pushed, in my opinion, towards all those little bells and whistles that lawyers use, little bits of reporting and time recording, which actually, for consumers, for my auditors, and everyone else, are absolutely worthless. Of course they have their place in these platforms, but I think, if I hear what Joe was saying about the shortage of genuine consultants out, independent consultants, and give you advice, but perhaps bring someone in from somewhere else when you're looking at these, whether you bring an accountant in, bring your accountant in, bring your business manager in, someone who's not a lawyer, because the lawyers can be happy with all the shiny bits that lawyers use.
From Guy's point of view, just the regulator has to say no lawyers are now allowed to buy anything that's techie, because we are rubbish at it. You're right, that's what we want. We're like, ooh, pretty shiny reporting this month. Not how does it work for the punter? And that's essentially the innovation, is to stop us buying stuff for us and start buying because we're looking over the parapet at the people buying us stuff. It's that, I suppose, isn't it?
And your admin staff will be working around the software platform because they've got the other documents they always used to like to use and not using the tool that's there. Sorry, Jo.
Joanna.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to flag up an example, because you asked for an example of somebody who's doing something well. I don't think he's here, but he's local from Brighton. Is Alan Larkin at Family Law Partners with his Engage platform, which he built with the knowledge transfer partnership with Brighton University, and is actually used by family lawyers. And I think he shares it with other firms too, as far as I can recall. It's been a little while since I've seen him. But that, a lot went into that, because I saw it develop, because I know him. And it was quite a cool way of doing things. The thing is, when it comes to building something, which is what we've kind of been talking about at the moment, is having the resource to build something. And I don't mean taking on a developer, because another firm I interviewed, I think in Wales, they used an external developer and they built something very cool that reduced the prices of things. But when it comes to building something, you need resource. And a lot of law firms, if you're focused on family law, for example, are focused on family law. They're not focused on building a piece of technology. And the thing that Family Law Partners had was a dedicated person. And I think it really depends whether we want to spend... It's about balancing the amount of time you spend with the amount of money you spend and with the amount of resource that you need.
And I think there's an interesting point as well that was raised there about, I suppose it's do you want lawyers who have learnt tech building coming up with these solutions, or do you want tech specialists who, like Guy, maybe have no knowledge but can transfer to the consumers? And perhaps Bavisha, I'll come to you on that first. What do you think? You've just been up in Manchester doing graduate recruitment, haven't you? So this is very live to you, the types of people that are coming through and skills that are coming through.
It is. I think you need a good mix of both. So you need people, I mean, I'm not from a law background either, but you need people that understand the day-to-day of what they do. How do we provide these legal services? How do we manage an M&A transaction or a real estate transaction? And then you need the techies that understand the art of the possible. And actually, it's by bringing those skill sets and expertise together that you really can hone in on what's possible and how to fix the problems and the challenges that people are facing on a day-to-day basis. So within our teams at Eversheds, we have, again, people that have come from a law background, people that have come from a tech background, people that have come from art history backgrounds. So we've got a really diverse skill set, and we are delivering some really great stuff because of it.
And so is the lawyer of tomorrow, would it matter if they have tech skills or not? Will lawyers always need to lawyer and that's what their expertise is, and actually there's other people who can do the tech stuff? Has anyone got any views on that, or is it going to shift?
It's going to be a blend, isn't it? I think it has to be a blend. It depends. I think litigation lawyers, I don't really see that changing very much for them. But when you look on the high street, how much we do on the high street, and I think there's 5,000 odd firms like me, that is a process. Conveyancing is a process. It's a very convoluted one, but it's a process. Probate, yet another convoluted process. And I think there are wins that can be had with technology and with innovation, but I firmly believe there's a space for a lawyer in there, and I've got no other lawyers involved in my development at the moment, deliberately. They will be involved in the testing when I get there, but I'm a lawyer, 20 years a lawyer, my father's a lawyer, my sister's a lawyer. It is what we live and breathe, and I know how lawyers' brains work. We get absolutely obsessed with edge cases. We get obsessed with outliers. We get obsessed with those little things that are outside the norm because it gives us a chance to show off our knowledge, experience, brilliance, whatever you call it. And the truth is, so much of what we do is not those edge cases. So I think we need, personally, to keep lawyers in the innovation loop, keep lawyers in the delivery of legal services, and perhaps maybe some key people will consult on tech build. But with my partnership at the University of Exeter, I know very well that their LLB curriculum includes law tech. They're being taught coding. You know, they're coming. The tech-enabled lawyers are coming. They're coming, you probably see it yourself, through the graduate schemes. They're on their way.
Anyone else want to comment on that?
I mean, onto your question of who's doing something well, it just occurred to me, Seed Legals, have you heard of them? They solve such a huge problem for us founders. You know, what would have cost us thousands of pounds in legal fees to set up, you know, every single time you do a raise, you can go on Seed Legals and they just charge you 1% of whatever the raise is, and they give you all the documents for free, and everything is programmed. And you know, that's the way law is going. And it's going to start with Seed Legals are doing it for raising, but you know, you can think of so many different parts of the law that could be codified, and the lawyer of the future is going to be building those apps. They're going to know a little bit about the law, they're going to know a little bit about UX, UI, how systems work, and they're going to build those products. And then when you look at the blockchain and smart contracts...
UX is user experience, just in case. I'm sure most people know, but just for the benefit of anyone who doesn't know, the SRA loves an acronym, so yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, if I'm getting too technical, just shut me down. But yeah, when it comes to the blockchain as well, blockchain promises for everything to be a smart contract, and you know, nothing will be litigated anymore when it comes to contracts, because the contracts will be programmed themselves and they'll be self-serving. And so again, you know, you think of the lawyer of the future, they're going to need to know how to build these smart contracts and how to code them properly and make sure that, you know, the edge cases don't let you down. And yeah, I believe that the lawyer of the future will be, you know, very, very technically skilled. There's obviously always going to be space for that, you know, the emotional components and the, you know, the wisdom that comes with years in the profession. Yeah.
Can I move back to Joanna? We go Joanna, and then we'll come to the floor for some further questions.
As usual, I don't really agree. Because
we won't disagree.
Because the thing is, what makes it interesting, and I completely understand, and I also believe that UX and UI are absolutely critical. So that's the user experience and the user interface. So if something's easy to use, people will use it. If they have to struggle to use it, they have to really want to use it. I think that the person of the future will be more tech-enabled. We've already got the next generation where they've grown up with a phone in their hand. You know, I do a podcast where I have a sort of, my opener is, what's the first piece of technology you remember? And then if I get a millennial, I can't, because they were literally, well, not literally, but they were almost born with a phone in their hand. So technology is natural to them. And I think that the lawyer of the future will have a natural propensity to technology because they will have grown up with it. It's like no one has to learn how to Google something. And I also think that the lawyer of the future, so they'll use tech for stuff. Maybe they'll use smart contract that's self-fulfilling. But if all contracts are self-fulfilling, that's going to take a lot of lawyer work away. And a lot of people want their contracts bespoke, not self-fulfilling. I have declined work because they've sent me a standard contract that's designed not for a freelance writer like me, but is designed for a company or, with more people. And I've read this, and I'm like, I will not be bound by this, so I don't want to work for you. And people go, oh, does it really say that? I'm like, yeah, because I read it. And so,
The one person who read the contract.
Well, they wanted to commit me to something. And I'm like, I don't think so, no. And so are we all going to get self-fulfilling contracts? Probably no. Are we going to get an easier workflow for things like conveyancing and probate that are really stressy for the consumer? Well, I really hope we do. I really hope that somebody works with the relevant departments and builds something that interfaces with it so that when you are dealing with something awful like death or moving house, you can do it more easily. So that's a long answer to a quick question.
No, it was a good answer, thank you. Let's go back out to the floor. Is any questions for the panel or any comments on what you've heard so far? Please raise your hand. Yeah, we've got a gentleman at the back. Congratulations to you. And then we've got a gentleman here, and I think there was someone down here as well. So, yeah, yes, just introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alan Schroeder. I'm from Lucre. We're a technology business. I want to know what you guys think is holding back innovation. And this could obviously, I think, is probably maybe sector-specific or individual, but it'd be good to know what you guys think is actually preventing us from moving forward.
So I think that was what's holding back innovation.
What's holding back innovation?
Specifically, I suppose, yeah, with particular focus perhaps on the legal sector. What's holding back innovation? What are the barriers? Do you want to go first?
I can kick off. So I think, and I'm not going to go into the debate, but one of the biggest challenges is the whole concept of the billable hour, which obviously is going to stop lawyers from talking to us and understanding how technology can solve their problems. But without going into that debate, I think the biggest challenge for us is all around the people. In the nicest possible way, it is the change management aspect. One, to get people's time to actually feed into helping us understand what the problem areas are and the challenges, but also once you've actually delivered something, it's actually keeping them engaged and making sure they're using it and constantly getting those benefits. So actually understanding what are their barriers to entry. So if we've delivered a new technology solution, why are they not using it? Are there things that we can be doing to unblock those reasons why they're not using it? And keeping that engagement and that feedback loop open, I think, is going to be a key to that challenge.
Ben?
The partnership model as well. So there are 2 reports that have come out of the Law Society in the last, I think, 3 years. One was 2019, one was 2022, on law tech innovation, particularly around the slow adoption by small and medium-sized firms. I imagine there are people in this room who sit in partnership meetings all the time. You look across a partnership in any law firm, you've got, at the one hand, this is broad generalization, the 35 to 50-year-olds who are keen to kick on, they want to change, they want to push this through. The budget for this change is this much. At the other end of the table, you've got the 55 to 65-year-olds who've got one eye on retirement, and they want their equity out, and they see their equity going into a big IT project, because IT is not cheap. But then it's probably your second biggest asset after your human resources. So I think, I won't get into the debate, billable hour is an issue, equally, but I think the partnership model, and I also think it's, to a degree, expanding on that, what I said earlier about this bit of a closed shop we got as lawyers, we don't, the much mooted Tesco law 20 years ago, 15 years ago, never really materialized. We don't have much competition other from people like us. I'm brutally honest, on the high street, I'm selling the same bananas as the other law firm selling bananas down the road.
Is that your marketing slogan?
It's worked. It's worked. But
No, but some of us are selling plantain.
I'm coming for your plantain, I tell you now. But no, the truth is, we talk about commoditized services and everything else. We are selling the same services. If there's one, it's just we're dressing up in different ways, whether it's client communication, whether it's access to your lawyer, whatever it is. But I think the point I'm making, we haven't got much challenging us from outside our profession that's forcing us to change as well. So billable hour, partnership model, lack of challenge from outside. is my view.
Yeah. Joanna?
Ooh, I think in some cases, there's a lack of a burning platform. So you get a lot of bigger firms, perhaps, where innovation is marketing. It's not really innovation. It's marketed as a differentiator. And it's just, oh yes, we have a head of innovation that we're paying big money, and they will innovate. Oh, what did they do before? Oh, they were a lawyer. Okay, so were they what did they do that was innovating? So there is a difference between what is real innovation and what isn't. And you've got where innovation is needed, whether you have a burning platform. And to quote it's a Richard Susskind quote, isn't it? How do you tell a room full of millionaires that they've got their business model wrong? So there is a burning platform, but I think there's hope because of the pandemic. You see, everyone goes on about lawyers not changing, but my God, you did a great job. Lawyers switched. Lawyers are all on Zoom. None of them were on Zoom before. Now everybody's on Zoom. E-signatures have become legal. The regulators are working together a lot more. Legal innovation is a thing at the moment. So, it's perhaps time to jump on a bandwagon and see where it can take you.
Guy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Ian says. There's no competition, really. So, everyone is roughly working for the same billable hour, roughly doing the same thing. I think what's needed is someone to just come in and upset the industry and say, look, I'm going to do everything much cheaper than everyone else. I'm going to publish my prices online. I'm going to use all the technology that I have to churn the stuff out faster, better quality, and give everyone a shock. I think that's kind of what needs to happen because at the moment, most law firms have got enough work. It's rolling in. They roughly all charge the same rates. There's a shortage of supply. That's one of the problems with access to justice. 5 billion people around the world are sitting with an unmet justice need, and yet the lawyers that are working, they're spoiled for choice with clients. So you really need some major disruption, I think, before things are going to.
So before we move on to the next question, I'll just throw that, because a couple of people now have made the point about, the competition in the market needs a shake-up. There needs to be some big change that would really move things forward. Put up your hand if you think that's true, that what's lacking at the moment is some big game-changing competitor in the market. Put up your hand if you think that resonates with you, that argument. Yeah, and put up your hand if that doesn't resonate with you. It should be more people, because I think there is. Okay, and then there's probably about I'd say about 15, 20 on the doesn't resonate, probably about 5 or 10 on the do resonate, and then probably the others sitting on the fence, not want to put their hand. So let's. I think was it a question down here, and then we had a question down here. Is it this gentleman here? Yeah, if we get the microphone to him, thank you.
Hi, Nick Cousins from Exisent. We're building a probate platform actually in this space. It's less of a question, more of a comment, just a couple of things I wanted to just reinforce really. The first key thing that Bavisa, you said about the capacity for change. I think if you're going to go on any journey to implement or adopt technology in a business to try and move things forward, you have to accept that there will be the need for a capacity for change. So what we find all the time is actually the hardest part of this is getting people to create enough time for themselves to take this thing seriously and move it forward. So that certainly is one of the first key aspects to this. The second thing is really this expectation that the thing you are buying solves all problems from day one. And that's a really fundamental mind shift that you have to go through, in that you have to accept iteration, right? You have to accept that what you get in, if it's a good partnership model, as Ben says, you can work with people, you can develop a product, you will get there in the end. If you go out looking for something that says this solves everything, in the immediacy, you're destined to failure because it doesn't exist, because you will all have little things you want it to do over time. The key thing is find the core stuff that you need to get right, make sure that piece of software does that job really well, and then work with the person providing you that service to develop it further. That's the best way to get to a sort of transformative model. I think if you sit on your hands waiting for it ticks all 100 items on my wish list, that's a that's a long and expensive journey to go through. So I think if you can keep those two things in mind, capacity for actually driving some change in your business, and a willingness to accept that the thing you're going to be bringing in will require further work, because this notion that your product is ever finished, I'm sure Guy will not have said this, right? The notion you have a finished product is a bit of a fallacy, to be honest, because the world moves on, it changes all the time. You need to adapt with that.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, actually, because we get clients who ask us, can you build X feature? And what I say to them is, if you use our product, we'll be more likely to build it. So if we've got one user who's now adopted our product and another one who's thinking of adopting our product, we're going to favor the ones that have adopted the product already. And they're saying, I want it to be able to do this, and I want it to be able to even change the colors. So I think that you need to take the leap and adopt the software. That's probably the trickiest part. And it's very difficult for law firms. I understand everyone's got to stop what they're doing, and everyone's got to overnight change to some completely new way of working. It's a leap of faith. But yeah, if you do that, then the vendor becomes your friend, and then it's an evolution from there.
Yeah, but to your point around evolutionary, yes, very much so. So we work in very much using agile concepts, and I have a team of product owners. And the reason I've done that and structured the team in that way is because there isn't an end game. It's understanding after you've delivered, keeping that feedback in loop on the ground to understand where you can take it. What is the next evolution? What is the next use case that we can help solve and help with our lawyers? But also working in that partnership model with our suppliers. So we do have an offshore development team, but we don't do bespoke development from the ground up. What we do is we work very closely with our suppliers, and we have that partnership relationship. So to Guy's point, if we're using a product and it doesn't do X, Y, Z, all we can do is explain to them why we would need that and why it's beneficial. It's then up to them whether it fits and aligns with their strategy, but all you can do is ask, and if you can get it to work for both parties, then happy days.
Thank you, and I think we had a question down here. Thank you.
Hi, Grant Sanders from Stephen Rimmer Solicitors. I just wanted to ask the panel, how important do you think innovation is for the recruitment process, and whether you're going to see some more consolidation in the market for the smaller firms that aren't prepared to innovate?
So that question was, I think, about innovation in recruitment processes, and what innovations might be happening. Are some firms going to fall behind on that? I mean, I suppose to add to that, there is the context of the SQE as well, which has obviously come in. Part of the idea of the SQE is that actually, whereas in the past you weren't necessarily always comparing apples for apples in terms of how somebody qualified, because they did LPCs at 100 different places, some may have different marking schemes for law degrees. The SQE, the idea is obviously you get an absolute standardised, consistent, everyone has to meet the same standard. You'll get results for tens of thousands of candidates, also with quite a lot of socio-economic data there, so you can also look to see, well, this person actually, their background suggests if they had a certain background that traditionally perhaps performs poorer, but they've been exceptional, that may be a way that you can identify real gems of candidates as well. But anyway, I suppose that's just an aside on one of the opportunities around the SQE. But what do other people think? Innovation in recruitment?
Yeah, I think it's really important. So to Joanna's point earlier, millennials, we've grown up around technology. We know what's possible, and actually people's expectation of what technology delivers and gives them outside of work, that expectation is coming into the workplace. And as I'm recruiting, a lot of the younger talent these days are asking about how we use technology, how we're innovating, what are we doing to change that mindset, and how are we digitizing our processes. And fundamentally, if you don't stay up with that, you will lose good talent.
Joanna?
Yeah, I mean, it's a war for talent. It's the other side of it. It's not just whether you're going to get the right people, it's whether the right people want to come to you. And if you do something, I think, a bit more innovative, perhaps they will. And also a lot of questions that I guess people looking to work in law firms are after is around culture and around responsibility, and there's a different attitude where there are factors outside compensation that influence the best people to work somewhere. So I think it's in a broad sense, innovation's affecting both sides, because the companies are looking for people who are likely to come up with something cool, and the cool people are looking for somewhere to work that reflects their interests and their values as well.
Did you just say the cool people?
Yeah.
All right, okay, yeah. I'd love to meet the cool people, but yes.
Me too, but you know.
They're not at the SRA.
Well, I'll leave that as a rhetorical question, but I'll let you be the judge of that. But there are many reasons I wanted to work for a regulator. Being classed in the cool people probably is not where people go into regulation. But anyway, so, and did you have any? Was there something behind your question? Did you have any thoughts on that?
Just I think, as you've all said, really, if you're not going to invest, which this is all investing in innovation, you're not going to get the best people, because they are looking, they are asking, what are you doing in your space? How do you differentiate yourself from the firm that is literally, in my case, 2 or 3 firms across the street? And what are they doing?
Yeah.
If you can show that you're forward thinking, then I think that you attract the best talent.
Thank you. That's really interesting. We've got this woman here in the middle.
Hi, it's Alexandra from Maltec UK. One thing that I would ask, and it's perhaps an ask of a sector, is we shouldn't be turning innovation into a PR, another PR issue. So what I've seen in my previous roles in the market, not so much now, is that there is this tendency to pick up on innovation as a very trendy topic, and then that's a recruitment tool, that's a tool to attract PR. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of the meat of the matter, if that makes sense, and keep our objective, keep our eyes on the ball. Whether we are going to be the next Microsoft in innovation, or whether you're going to end up burning like a bright star, well, that's a game that we're all playing, right? But we shouldn't be putting the value of promoting innovation over what it is that we're actually doing. Because in the long run, when you're a candidate and you're joining a firm, and then you are going to realize that how much of the innovation, very much like diversity, was just PR, and how much of that is in line with your integrity as a firm.
Yes, thank you. Really, really good point. We've got any further questions? Did you have a question? We'll just get a microphone to you, sorry, just so we can hear, and they'll pick it up on the broadcast as well.
I also feel that driving the word innovation through the entire legal practice is so simplistic, because the areas of law we do, some are not commoditized. You cannot innovate more than you already have, but more than what is going on at the moment. Are we saying that for people that do litigation, we're going to be replacing the judges with some app?
Well, no, there's problems with that already, because you've seen all the data coming out of America. They've had to cancel a load of the apps, and Joe probably knows a lot more than me, because the problem with a lot of those apps that are being used, and that has a data going in, which has all the prejudices of the data from behind. So you've got 40 years of prejudicial data gone in that has minorities, socioeconomic members of society who are being disproportionately sentenced, let's say, and that is then producing the same results out of a data set that's gone into a machine, artificial intelligence. I don't think it's on my slides. I'm 20 years a criminal defence lawyer until the 31st of January, 31st December last year, because of legal aid cuts. I'm out. My firm's out, sadly. The best piece of government software I've seen is the Crown Court digital case system. It's brilliant. The divorce portal, I don't think is up to much. Online probate's crashing. There's countless portals all across the conveyancing network, but the Crown Court digital case system puts the case at the middle. And I went through the whole process where we went from literally in the Crown Court, paper briefs in pink ribbon being handed to the barristers, to the days that those same barristers, we all attended sessions in Crown Court buildings right across the country saying this is how you're going to work. There were the archetypal, the eponymous rumpoles of the Bailey there, men and women who were 50 years into their career, and they have adopted it. And I don't think innovation, I agree with you, I don't think innovation should be the cause of our profession. This shouldn't be the flag we're waving. But if we close, I know you're not suggesting this, but if we close our eyes to it, Someone else is going to do it. And I think Guy would tell you this, and any of the other developers in the room, you know, I hear CI/CD, someone help me with this, continuing investment, continuing development all the time in the tech world. We've got to change. You know, I mean, we go to supermarkets and scan our own produce.
I agree with you. We've got to change. But what we're talking about here is about management, about how we lawyers manage our work. That is what I'm deducing from this conversation that is going on. What I'm talking about is who is giving the advice? Where is the innovation in that? So can you explain to me how you innovate giving advice?
I don't think...
What I'm saying to my client, how do you innovate
My view is the platform I'm building, what I'm building, for example, we're high street law firms, all we do is give advice, is identifying the things that lawyers don't need to be doing. Why am I photocopying people's passports? Why am I sending very standardized letters? These things can be automated. Free me up so I, as a lawyer with 20 years under my belt, can give more advice to more individuals on more occasions. The problem, the cultural change, I think, innovation needs to change massively. The cultural change in our profession is this ridiculous notion of file ownership. And I know there will be lawyers in here much more free thinking than us, but if you want, for example, to move to things like 4-day weeks, 3-day weeks, remote working, you've got to be able to leave your file behind and someone else picks it up where you left off and moved on. And I think the innovation isn't just the tech. I just think we've got to see as lawyers, and I'm talking as one, that what our value is providing that advice. You're spot on. And let's not take us out of the circle. We need to be in this innovation circle. We need to be in this loop.
We are giving this talk the wrong title. You should not be titled innovation or innovate. So you guys need to come up with the appropriate title for this gathering we're having today.
Wait, that's probably, I think, Ben didn't come up with the title for this session, so we won't blame him for that.
Give me half an hour, I'll find one.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But no, thank you. Now, we're just on to the last few minutes now, so I wanted to give, we've got a question from Ursula, and anyone else want to put up their hand? We'll come to Ursula, and we've got a gentleman at the back as well. So, yeah, if we go Ursula and then we're a gentleman.
Okay, this is a quick and hopefully easy and useful question for you to answer. Let's just say that there may, floating around in this room, or perhaps, speak it softly, in YouTube land in a few hours' time, be some lawyers who are pink beribboned litigators, super duper focused on their clients and very paperless. Could you each give me one quick and dirty tech patch of any kind that would improve their lives? These guys are sending out 2 copies of their client care letter to each client and saying return it by post. They are there, they're out there. A quick and dirty fix right now that would sort somebody out and move them on a little bit, innovate them a little bit. Can you think of anything?
Does anyone want to come back?
I'm happy to. So one of the reasons I got into law tech was I had a pretty disappointing experience working with the law firm. Everyone in the law firm who was working on my case had seen me at some point or had heard something about me, but wasn't in real contact with me. I tried phoning the firm and speaking to them, and I kept getting the receptionist, and they were busy and doing something else. And eventually what I did was I stood outside and waited for them to come downstairs to smoke their cigarettes so I could ask them what was happening with my case. And I said to them, could we open a Dropbox, and I'll put all the files in the Dropbox that you need, and we can work on a Google Doc. They'd never heard of Dropbox, they'd never heard of Google Docs. I said, what if we open a Slack channel, or we all were in a WhatsApp group together? And they said, no, we definitely don't do that. So the dream product that I wanted was a WhatsApp for law, a system where I could watch the lawyers literally typing and chatting to each other, and I could enter the conversation when I needed, and I knew exactly what was going on, and that's kind of what I built. And so my point is the switch from synchronous to asynchronous, I think, is quite important. Lawyers like to structure their time in terms of meetings. They will meet you, and they'll sit and write things in their pad of paper. They'll take in a lot of information, and they'll go work by themselves for a while, then they'll meet you again. And when I showed a few lawyers the product that we were building, they said, that looks like WhatsApp. We don't like WhatsApp. We don't like when our clients WhatsApp us. But I think that if you can start to get into the habit of working asynchronously, you can up your productivity so much. I know that as a manager, after I go off this talk, I'm going to open my phone, I'm going to see all the WhatsApp groups that I'm in, I'm going to be able to read all the conversations that happened. If those conversations happened on Zoom, I wouldn't know what was going on. So I think, it's a leap. But the move to async, there's tools like Slack and Teams, and obviously our product, Legal Connection. It's a big productivity hack if done right.
Just out of curiosity, who uses WhatsApp or something similar to communicate with clients? Yeah, 4 or 5. Does anyone want to share whether that works well for them or not? Yep.
I use it very discreetly for remote court hearings. So we have a little WhatsApp group going between us, the barrister, and the client while we're on the remote hearing on Teams.
Right. Less of a fan of Teams. Anyone else who uses WhatsApp, does that work well for them? Yep, gentleman at the back, just this hand up.
Yeah, hiya. I use my WhatsApp for updates, basically, not to send documents, just to update the client. This is what's going on. It's rather easier than sending an email or them phoning the office and trying to get through to us. So WhatsApp works pretty well for us.
And do people like the fact they know whether you've read it or they've seen it? Or
I think it's quite easy, especially not all clients are, they don't want to use that, but the ones that do want to use it, it's easy for them because they can send a message out to me. If I don't reply straight away, maybe the next day, I'll send them something back and say, okay, this is what's going on, don't worry. I'll send this out to you by email or, so on and so on. It just makes life easier sometimes, I think. It's not maybe not the best tool to use, but it's pretty good for me. It works well, and you can bill easily as well. You can just go check how many messages been received and sent, and then you can just put them down as units. It's not that difficult, I don't think.
This is going to be an interesting segue to the next panel session, and I do know actually the research shows lawyers think the most important thing to the client is the outcome or winning, whereas actually research shows communication and knowing what's going on with your case is actually what consumers say is the most important thing. We've got time for one more question from the back, and then although...
Can I give Ursula one more answer? She asked for some quick fix. 2 screens. Okay? Give all your lawyers 2 screens. I had so much resistance for putting another screen on people's desks in my office. It was mental.
What was the resistance?
I've always
Star
used to
Trek
want. I've now got people with 2 screens asking for 3.
Right.
So the reality is, you'll have your lawyer. My father has just gone through his first 60 years in the legal profession, right? And he got a Lifetime Achievement Award and said, "Here's to my next 60." So, but he's gone to 2 screens and he's lost the paper off his desk, because what he can have is the document on one screen he's reading, and he can be working on the right-hand screen. And a second screen is going to cost you £129 from HP online. And if you double that up if you get a decent PDF writing piece of software where you can annotate PDF documents and you can put hyperlinks and you start to use it and highlight it, and they can save their notes on that. And when he goes to court, that will be there. 2 screens. It's made a big change both for admin and lawyers in my office over the years.
That's a great tip, and your store selling extra screens is available
Yeah,
just outside. So let's go to the very last question then, gentleman at the back, and then we'll wind up. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben. So just back to that PR comment, right? So I'm Shaq Asher at Forte Markets and the Legal Technology and Innovation Institute. So I think we've been in this Legal Tech 101 Groundhog Day for about 5 years. So the more we shout about change and success and practical use cases benefits everyone. So what Guy's doing, what Ben's doing. I mean, we focus in the Institute on practical skill sets, just teaching lawyers what you can get out of Microsoft 365. Instead of spending £25,000 on HiQ, it's a glorified SharePoint. You can do that using 365. So the focus on success stories is massive. And I think that the drivers for change across legal services at the moment are in-house lawyers. They are pushing the law services to the law firms to change. And the smaller firms, and what Joanna said in terms of contract automation, contract management, globally, that is the biggest amount of change that's happening. And pointing out where we are innovating is key, as opposed to just renovation. Moving your meeting onto Microsoft Teams, that's renovation, that's not innovation. So, we need to be more daring, we need to make more change, and absolutely, look, shout about it, because, I know what guys have done, fantastic stuff. What what Ben's doing is great. So the more of that, the better, really.
Yeah. And sorry.
Thank you. And what Bhavisha and Joanna's doing is great as well, just so everyone can say...
I was speaking to Shaq on Friday.
No, I was just going to add to that point, actually, PR is massively important. So what we're doing internally is we've got something we call Tell Me a Story campaign. So where we have done something different and we've delivered benefits, we get the lawyer and the partner, ideally the client if they're involved as well, to do a 2-3 minute video, and then we share that across the partners. So actually they're hearing it from people that are getting these benefits, and there's nothing better at raising people's confidences and making them more aware than hearing it from other partners.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give each panellist, there may be something they either haven't had to say or wanted to say that they haven't been able to, or perhaps just one final message they'd like to leave you with. Just 10-20 seconds from each panellist, and then we'll close up the session. So Joanna, anything you finally wanted to say?
Okay, well, I'm going to go fast because I've got a couple of things to say. So firstly, I totally agree with Shaq about Microsoft 365. I think you could do an awful lot with it. And bear in mind, if you can do it in Excel, you're using 45-year-old technology, so it's not new. Little tip for Ursula, for the litigator sending out 2 sets of client care documents. You need an easy document automation app, really, but you don't need a really clever tool at all. If you don't have 2 screens, that's nice. I have 2 screens, so I'm a journalist, so I have to, at least 2. And it depends how busy I am, I might have 3. Then the other thing we haven't really talked about is one of the really massive drivers of innovation is the startup dynamic. The fact, that people like Greg are doing things, that people who aren't lawyers are coming in and looking to create exciting solutions, and that firms, big firms like Eversheds are pioneering innovative technology as well. So there is a whole ecosystem of legal tech and innovation that's sort of driving things forward a lot more. So it is actually not a misnomer, I don't think, this discussion, because it is about change and transformation, not just how you're managing your business, but how different businesses are gradually going to look going forward. Because tech's one of those things that if you look at 1 year ago, is not much difference. But if you look at the first iPhone, and we're now on iPhone 13, my God, look at the different things it does. So that's the tech thing. I can't remember the quote, but if you look back 1 year, it's not very much. But you look back 10 years and you see transformation.
Thank you. Guy?
Yeah, no, I think I've already spoken a lot, but I want to thank you all for listening, and if anyone wants to know more about our products or even just see a demo and give their feedback, I'd love to chat to any of you.
I also think, Guy, you had if you want to know how to cut through on social media and online in the marketing world, Guy's got some interesting insights there, so pick up that with him. Bhavisha?
Yeah, so from my perspective, if you're not innovating, you should be, because people will vote with their feet. So you'll lose talent, you will lose clients, so you need to be thinking about it. And the other thing I would say is make friends with your cybersecurity and your risk and compliance departments. They're genuinely not a blocker. We work very well with them. Get them on board, get them engaged, and make sure you're on the same page.
Thank you, Ben.
And from my point of view, forget tech for a minute, I think just the business management of law firms in the small and medium sector, you'll find any of you who have got practice managers, you'll all come up to me afterwards and tell me I'm wrong, but there's a high prevalence of former bank managers and former accountants who run practice management in a lot of law firms. With the utmost respect to the fantastic job I'm sure those individuals do, I think this day and age they're probably the wrong people to be in practice management. Or if they're not, they're more of a CFO, they're the financial officer. You probably need someone along business development routes, marketing, PR, advertising, informing your partnership, because lawyers are very good at taking on information and soaking it up and challenging it. It's what we do, but we don't have that business experience in the same way other sectors do. And perhaps look at diversifying the talent pool in your partnership, or those who advise your partnership, beyond perhaps just looking at the quarterly billing and yearly billing and billing targets, which are, next topic.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to our panelists. I think there's some really interesting insights there. A big thank you as well to you in the audience. Some really great questions and also insights from the floor. So we really appreciate that. What we're going to do now is we've run slightly over, so I'm losing as chair. But what we'll do is we'll come back here at 12:15, just in time for some coffees, grab our speakers. I'm sure they're around to have a chat with you afterwards, or people from the SRA. And we'll be back here at 12:15 to hear about a bit more focus on what consumers want and insights around consumers accessing legal services. So thank you. A round of applause for our panel, please.